Are you looking for more out of your life? Do you need ideas on how to start new businesses and how to move forward in your own personal life? Well, guess what? You have come to the right radio show. At You Can Overcome Anything podcast show, you will learn and hear from many people from all walks of life who are sharing their challenges, their stories, the habits, and the mind shifts they had to overcome to become who they are today. On top, you will get a chance to connect and see how you can overcome anything by networking and learning about your next move through this radio show. I present to you our great speakers at You Can Overcome Anything podcast show with your host, Cesar Espino. Hello there, and welcome back to another episode of You Can Overcome Anything podcast show. It is your host, Cesar Espino, and today I have a very special guest. Her name is Maxine Nwaneri. Hey, Maxine, how are you?
I'm doing so well today, Cesar. Thank you for having me.
Great. Thank you so much. Let me give the listeners and viewers a little bit about your background, and then we can dive into it. Yeah. Maxine is a certified coach, business consultant, international speaker, and founder of The Future is Greater, a professional services firm focused on helping individuals and corporate clients achieve extraordinary results. She is an external optimist and a spiritual MasterChef. She went from a homeless addict and dropout to an award-winning student, Cambridge graduate, and one of the top 30 under 40 individuals in her industry. Wow, amazing. Definitely want to tap into that. So why don't you start by letting us know where are you from and how was your upbringing?
Yeah, sure. So I was born in Lagos, Nigeria, in West Africa. And, in terms of how I was brought up, I'm one of four, the third of four children. I have two incredible parents, and they really did their best to raise me and my siblings. I have two sisters and a brother. And, I was quite quiet growing up. I literally my parents told me I spent my whole childhood reading kind of one book or another. So it was kind of like a quiet upbringing. We got taken to church every Sunday, so we had the whole Sunday school upbringing. But around the age of around 11, my family and I kind of I say accidentally emigrated from Nigeria, where I was born, to the UK. My mom had come over to the UK to study to be a nurse, midwife. And, mother of four children, we were left back in Nigeria, but she's like, I miss my kids. So it was kind of like one by one, we came to accompany her during her studies. And by the time she got done with her studies, everybody was here and settled in school, and it kind of didn't make any sense to go back. And so we kind of accidentally moved over here. And so I've been in the UK literally on and off over the last 30 years.
Wow. So let me ask you this. How was that experience overall? I was born in Mexico City, and I migrated to the United States when I was 10. And I remember for me, just coming from a culture of being in Mexico to the U.S., it was definitely a culture shock. And, just making that transition, it was difficult, not so much easy for me, especially not being able to speak the language, right? How was that for you, though, going from Nigeria to the UK in terms of people, in terms of culture, any of that stuff?
Yeah, no, to be honest, I really admire your story, and I read about that. I was fascinated. I didn't have the language barrier challenge because English is my first language. Nigeria has over 400 languages. So English is the one that kind of unites everybody. Yeah. So I didn't have that, but it was so challenging in the sense that the countries are so different. I had to, when I moved to the UK, I had to kind of drop back a couple of years at school because in Nigeria, you can kind of skip ahead, if you're good at stuff and keep going. Whereas in the UK, you have to be a certain age and a certain grade. So I got moved back, which was, not great initially. And I was very nervous about how would kids accept me. I am an introvert. So, I was very introverted, very quiet, very nervous that, kids would not accept me from, an African child. So I kind of kept, a lot of stuff bottled up. It was a very, very difficult transition for me. And my mother was kind of like a single mother initially for, the first few years, because my dad, was back in Nigeria still. He had a big job there. So my mom was on her own looking after 4 kids and working. It was kind of like a very, very difficult situation. And finally, when my father moved over, initially he'd left this amazing job, trying to come to the UK and get a similar level job, and it just was impossible at that time. So, for him, as an adult looking back, that must have been quite difficult for him to take, from being a general manager of a whole West African region to not being able to get anywhere near that kind of job. It was very challenging. So there was a lot of tension that we had to deal with. So both in the home and then for me trying to find my way in this whole new culture, it was quite challenging.
Yeah, wow, that's amazing. And I can only imagine, not only being an introvert, that can definitely be a challenging, especially coming from a different place into a new country and going through all of that. Now, how was it for you growing up once you were acclimated and you were able to more or less get situated in the UK? How was that for you moving on?
Yeah, so gradually, the first day of school, I didn't say a word because I had a Nigerian accent. I was like, what are they going to think about my Nigerian accent? So when I finally started speaking, I actually managed to learn what an English accent sounds like the first day. So if I start, the whole first morning, people would ask me my name. I didn't say anything because I was like, I better not say anything. Yeah. So I listened the whole morning, and then, by the afternoon, I'm like, okay, I know what an English accent sounds like. And then when somebody spoke to me in the afternoon, I had a totally English accent. So when I finally started speaking with my beautiful new English accent and got acclimatized, things got better. But like I said, there was being an introvert and not really knowing how to kind of process some of the things I was dealing with. I kept a lot of stuff bottled up. So, if there was difficulties at home, I wouldn't speak to anybody about it. I'd just not say anything. At school, I had some friends, but no real close friends to confide in. So I kind of kept a lot of stuff bottled up really until one day I literally just snapped. And I thought, you know what? I need to have some sense of freedom. At home, my parents don't understand me. I just want to be like all the other kids. And, I ran away from home actually as a teenager, which is where like the chaos that you described, in the introduction began. It was literally in trying to find myself, trying to find some sense of freedom. I made one stupid decision after another. First of all, it was the wrong guy. Then I got involved in drugs, and I, ended up dropping out of school. And it was just one thing after the other, kind of digging myself into this rock bottom basically, until one day actually I'd lost my job. I was working at Starbucks. I'd lost the job and literally had no money left. And there was a lady that was a friend of mine at the time saying, hey, we're down to our last few pounds, which is like the money we use here in the UK. Like, let's go see this guy. We can work for him. And, basically, we don't have to do too much and make loads of money. And it turned out that this guy that she was trying to take us to was a pimp. And he basically went on to say to me that, people like you have no choice but to work with people like me. And the guy was right, based on the situation I got myself into. So it was kind of a strange teenage years that I lived through, just trying to find myself, trying to, find my voice, trying to find who I am.
Wow. So how old were you when you decided to run away?
18.
18. Let me ask you from your perspective, right? And you kind of mentioned that, right? You were trying to find yourself. You were trying to, look in elsewhere for that for yourself, right? And, talking to other people and just even seeing different stories. Sometimes people either tend to run away or tend to fall into drugs or into gangs because they feel like there is that acceptance in your life missing, right? And so we then sometimes confine ourselves into those different aspects to be able to more or less be accepted, maybe to find ourselves. What is your take on that, number one? And number two, how critical, now that you see this from this perspective, is it for you to be associated with the right type of people?
Oh my gosh. So basically yes and yes to like this need to be accepted, right? So it's so funny looking back, I was always accepted at home, but I just didn't know how to relate. I didn't know how to communicate. It was everybody's fault, my problems, I didn't take responsibility for anything. So I felt like I didn't belong. And looking for that belonging in the wrong places, like a lot of people do, was what led me to these bad influences. And then just like what you said, I really think that, who you surround yourself with is going to be who you become. I've heard this, and I think I heard even on one of your previous podcasts, like the 5 people you surround yourself with, we hear this often, is who you become. And it's so, so true. Literally, to be honest, I say to the people I work with right now, if you tell me you've got a vision and you tell me this is where you're going, and we look at who you're surrounding yourself with and being influenced by and listening to, and it doesn't reflect where you say you're going to go, you're kidding yourself if you think you're going to get there. It's everything.
Yeah, definitely. And the other thing too, you talked about going through this journey. You're having you more making decisions after decisions, and more or less, I wouldn't call them failures, but you were going through it. You're failing left and right, right? Do you see that now, looking back, as that was a lesson to be learned, and I'm glad I went through that, or do you have any regrets in terms of that?
Yeah, such a good question. If I could do it again, especially now that I'm a parent, what I put my parents through, I don't know that I'd want to put anybody.
Yeah.
I don't know that I'd want to put anybody through that ever again. It's just so shameful. In fact, just sharing some of this stuff, I don't like it. But I do share things like this because if anybody's going through something like that right now, or if they have family members, I've gone to speak around the world, and literally every time I share this story, somebody comes crying saying, my child's going through this right now, and you give me hope. So I don't love the fact that this is who I am, but I love the fact that it allows me to have the impact I'm able to have right now. I love that it gives me empathy. There's a lot of great things I've been able to do in my life, a lot of great people I've been able to meet, but I don't kind of put myself so much higher than anybody else because I know what it is to be at what the world calls scum and rock bottom. And I've been everything in between to where I am right now. And I'm still the same person. So every life has value, everybody has value. And I think this experience helps me realize that and really see people, see the divine in everybody and appreciate that and empathize with that wherever people are on their journey. So I'm grateful for the perspective it gives me. I'm grateful for the impact it allows me to have. But yeah, I don't know if this answers your question.
No, you definitely did. And the other thing too that comes to mind is, kind of going back to that journey and learning from that and looking at that perspective. I know that a lot of people, like you said, you find families where their kids might be going through something similar, and then they can resonate with your story, right? Another thing that also comes into mind is, going back to even one of the decisions that you had to probably come up with is when your friend said, hey, we can go make a lot of money, and you go see that pimp, right? What goes through your head? At that point, what went through your head saying, yeah, I can either do this or not do this, or I'm going to have to, as you said, people like you, based on how they put it, is this is the only option you have. So what was going through your head at that time?
Yeah, no, it's such a, let me just take you back to there because it was quite an epic moment. Yeah. Such an unbelievable story. So literally, she tells me to go along to this interview, right? So I go along, and actually the realization of what I was getting myself into didn't really hit me until I walked into that apartment. And I'm telling you what, the smell of the place hit me like boom. And I began to panic, as in visibly shaking panic. And my heart, I could feel it beating. It was like it was going to jump out of my chest. And in my mind, you were asking what's going on. I was like, how in the world did I end up here? Like, what am I doing here? I literally went to Sunday school growing up. I remember growing up, I wanted to be a doctor. Like, what in the world am I doing here? And, just in that panic, all of these thoughts racing through my mind, I think I must have kind of zoned out a little bit, because the next thing I remember was this guy basically saying to me, you do know how much you're supposed to charge, right? And I'm like, I have no clue what you're supposed to charge. I don't know. I had no idea where to look, what to think, what to do. I just stood there with my mouth open thinking, how can this be my only choice? How can this be my life? That's when he said, people like you, what choice do you have anyway? And if he had slapped me in the face, it would have hurt less, because that was the painful truth. I just stood there shaking, physically shaking, thinking, how can this be my only choice? How in the world do I get out of this? And I tell you what, Cesar, as I'm hearing your voice, this sound, the volume, I hear a voice within me say, this is not who you're meant to be. You're meant for so much more. I had no idea who or what that voice was, but I'm like, you know what? I want that. I want to believe that. So I chose to believe it, and it gave me the strength I needed to run out of that room into the freezing cold street. Cold air had never felt so good. And I still had no money, still had no plans, but I just had this known within me that I was meant for more. And that really was enough to cling to then keep following that voice. I've come to know that voice as the voice of God. For me, prior to that moment, God had been like a grandfather, because he was my parents' God, Mom and dad say, we've got to go to church. I'd roll my eyes and go to church, And I hadn't really known God. All I knew was God was this thing that parents made me come, Mom and dad's dad. In that moment, God began to lead me, and I got to know him more and more, and I got to know God as my own father. And I came back willingly. I'd obviously drifted away from the faith, and now I've come to know God as my own father, and he led me. All of those things I went to do that have been great have been through, following the promptings, being guided, and being as you said, surrounded myself with people that would challenge me and help me and encourage me to step into the greatness that was always in me. And God put it in me before I was ever born.
Yeah, and that's great to even, I know a lot of times we might be going through the idea of you have this voice or the gut feeling or something's telling you that the current situation you're in is not the situation you should be in. And I guess my advice to the people that are listening to us and watching us is that you have to be able to take that and do not get tempted by the money. Do not get tempted by the surroundings or the people. Like, you utilize what you're feeling inside or that little voice, because that can definitely be the one thing that's saving you for a greater future, right? Sometimes we come from a place of pain to be able to create a purpose, right? So let's talk a little bit about your addiction and being homeless. You turn around all of that, and so what was the one thing that kind of helped you step out of that into who you became to be?
Yeah, I would say, there's so much, I literally collapsed like over 20 years into in this few minutes, right? Yeah. But I'd say probably the biggest thing, and it's relevant for anyone who's looking for any kind of turnaround, is to decide, to make a decision. So when I was in that moment, the facts, everything that, the circumstances, everything suggested that this guy was right. The fact that I could not get another job, the fact that people like me didn't amount to anything, all of that stuff was factually true. And when I heard this voice, this is not who you're meant to be, you're meant for so much more, which I actually believe can apply to you or anybody listening who wants to transform anything. It's not who you're meant to be. If you're surrounded by difficult circumstances, you're meant for so much more. And you have a decision to either look at your circumstances and feel like, well, this is all there is, or you can do what I advise you to do, what I did, which is to decide that, you know what, I'm meant for more and I'm going to go for it. Because the truth is, there's so much more to life, to possibility than what that I can see. We're mostly energy. Most of us as a human being is like 99.999% what you can't see. So all of the circumstances, however crushing they may be, doesn't even begin to reflect what's possible. So just deciding that, I want something, and decide means literally cut off all other options. That is the first step, I would say. And for me, every major thing I've ever had to do or ever accomplished came from a decision. I'm going to do this.
I really love that. And one of the things that I actually posted something, I think a couple of weeks back on Facebook, is that the decisions and choices that we make today will determine the quality of life that we have tomorrow.
Oh, yes.
So when we start looking at it from that perspective, is that every decision that we're making is going to have an impact on our future. And the quality of life that we're going to have is going to be dependent on that. And so, as you mentioned, I think that is critical. And I think many people might end up getting stuck on that decision, the decision to stay in a loving relationship, the decision to cut out this job because it's not working out for me, the decision to start working out and eating healthy, the decision of doing all these different things. It just comes down to that first step, making the decision. And I like what you said, just cut off all your other options, because that's what you decide. And so that's very powerful. So if you're listening to this, you're watching this, make sure you're taking those golden nuggets, because that is very, very powerful. So let's talk about this, your business, right? Where did that come from, which is the business of it's the future is greater. How did that come about?
Yeah, so again, it was something I really believe that I was divinely led to do. I never really planned to start a business. After all of this, I met and married an incredible man by the name of Nnamdi. We lived in Norway when we first got married, which is a beautiful part of the world, by the way. I highly recommend you go visit if you've never been. Yeah, so we were living in Norway, and we had our first child, Chiamaka. Her name means God is good or God is beautiful, because that's really what I've come to believe. So I had everything. At this point, I had the man, I had the house, I had the baby, and I was miserable. Because in Norway, we're very, very blessed because we get 1 year's full maternity, which is wonderful. I wish all women had this choice around the world. But when you are like me, I've been in a sales executive role. I've been flying here, there, and everywhere in my corporate career, and I loved it. I'd gone from that to being a stay-at-home mom for a year. And I remember thinking, this is just so much of a shock to the system. I love this baby. I love everything about this, but what am I really going to do for a year? And I know some people might be thinking, whatever. But seriously, if you're a type A go-getter person like me, that is like really the worst thing ever. No, almost no adult conversation, nothing. So I remember thinking, as most new mothers are, or sleep deprived, just your hormones are all over the place when you have a baby. It was very, very chaotic. And I remember thinking, what's wrong with me? I just want to be grateful, but I'm not. And I remember being up in the middle of the night, like just miserable after I put the baby to bed. And I remember crying to God. I felt like kind of being back in that room again, funny enough, because hearing what choice of people like you have anyway. You hear that, as a woman, once you have kids, that's it, your life's over, right? What choice do you have? And I remember thinking, actually, I know different. There's always a choice. And right now, I don't know what it is. Like, God, I need a miracle. And that literally was my prayer in the bathroom in the middle of the night. And I literally just felt this peace come over me. And I heard, you know what, you could just study for 10 to 15 hours a week. And, that will give you some intellectual stimulation with adults. And then you can spend the year with your baby. And I thought, well, that's perfect. I'll do that. So once I agreed to do that, I went back to bed feeling really happy with myself. At this point in my life, this was several years ago now, I'd never seen a Facebook ad in my life. But once I kind of agreed with God, I'm going to study 10, 15 hours a week, the very next day, I see my first ever Facebook ad saying, have you got 10 to 15 hours a week? And I'm like, yes. Would you like to do part-time studies? Yes. Do you like helping people? I'm like, yeah. And it just said, do you want to be a transformational coach? And I said, what is a transformational coach? And I literally clicked on this link. And it was an advert to basically train to use all your skills, your expertise, your experience, and use that to basically help people as a transformational coach. And it was a year-long program where you get certified, you learn to build a business. And that's what I did in my maternity leave. So I always kind of joke that I had a baby, I gave birth to a baby in a business in the same year, because that's how it came about.
Yeah, no. So what kind of coach? So is it all primarily like life coaching or
Yeah, so life and career coaching. So typically with individuals, or actually corporations bring me in to coach their individuals in groups and individually on, life-related things, but also career-related things. There's a lot of women right now under a lot of pressure because of everything that's going on in the world right now. A lot of people working from home. Work-life balance was a challenge before, but now that work is at home, there is the lines between work and home are so blurred. So it's really chaotic. There was a recent survey that came out, McKinsey and Lean In, released the Women in the Workplace report every year for the 6th year in a row now. And 1 in 4 women is under so much pressure, they're thinking of leaving work. And it goes up to 1 in 3 women when they're mothers, because it's just so intense, the pressure people are under, with everything that's been going on. So what we love to do at The Future is Great is help people release some of that pressure, help people see how they can thrive, both in their life and in their careers, and not feel like they have to sacrifice one for the other or put themselves last all the time because they have a family.
Do you guys focus primarily on men or female, or it doesn't really matter?
Yeah, so typically my work with individuals, it's focused mainly on women. I have a membership program with a group of women in there. But with the corporate work, companies bring me in to help their employees with work-life balance, with resilience. And in that work, in the corporate space, we do work with men as well. And actually some men randomly find me and work with me. But in terms of general marketing to individuals, we speak mainly to women. But I think everybody can benefit from, being able to cope better in their life and balance it, life and career, better.
Okay, awesome. I have something here that says, I am an eternal optimist. And it says, I try to see the glass half full and find the silver lining in absolutely everything, even during these unprecedented times. Can you elaborate more on that in terms of how does that apply to you?
Yeah. So, like I said, for me, my faith in God is such a big thing. And it's really helped me through just so many challenges in life. And there's this verse I really love in the Bible that says, it's Romans 8:28, for all things work together for good, for those who love God and are called according to his purpose. So everything. So this could be a pandemic. This could be anything can work together for your good. And I've tried to make that my life philosophy. And just to give you an example of how this kind of played out with, myself and my clients, I always encourage you, let your trouble pay you. Don't go through pain for the sake of pain, right? Let that pain, we can help you transform into power and into some sort of purpose. Perfect example was a beautiful client of mine. She is a mother of 2 young children, a woman of color, And we've had all this stuff kick off since the George Floyd murder in May. And it's been terrible because that has kind of highlighted racial issues everywhere. So this particular woman happens to be based in the UK, and there is a lot of systemic racism here, like everywhere else. And she was appalled at how Black children are treated in the school system. So I said to her, okay, well, this is ugly. Racism is never good, no matter who it's against. How can we make this pay you? How can we turn this into something good? So in our work together, she has basically gone from being angry and unsure what to do about racism in her kid's school to being, she's a school governor, been invited to join the curriculum committee. She's now working to basically transform the whole curriculum of the school so that Black children are treated better and everybody's taught better so that, this gets fixed systemically. The work that she's been doing has caught the attention of the leadership in the local area. So she's now writing a report that's potentially going to change the school system within the UK. This would have never happened had she not experienced racism, had children not experienced racism. So for me, there's a lot of ugly things in the world. My philosophy and my thing I like to do is how can we make that pay? How can this be used for the greater good of people? I don't want to have trouble or pain for pain's sake. Let it pay.
Yeah, I love that too. And a lot of people don't see it that way, right? And I love the fact that, again, it goes back to the point that I was talking earlier. Sometimes from pain, a purpose is driven or born. And so maybe we have to start looking at things from that perspective. Everything that we're going through, whether it's good or bad, is like, what are the lessons? What can I do? What can I learn from here? And how can I turn that around to create a bigger benefit than what is doing right now? And I know we focus so much on the positivity, and we don't want to deal with the negativity or that pain, except that can help us in many different aspects. I've seen and heard many different stories like this where, again, somebody creates something from that. So that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So here's another thing that I want you said, and I think it goes back to your faith. You said you're a spiritual master chef, which you can take the raw ingredients we sometimes get dealt in life and make a masterpiece out of it using spiritual and real world success principles. Can you elaborate on that too?
Yeah, no, the spiritual master chef, I love that, because basically it came about, that's not a name I gave myself. I was just speaking to someone and she's watched me over the years, and I have this optimistic view. And every time I like I said, I want my trouble to pay me, right? So I'll usually kind of create something great. Like, for example, I had this situation where I was homeless. I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to go back to school and become like the best student ever. And there's always something incredible that comes out of it. And she's like, you're like a spiritual master chef. You get dealt the rawest ingredients. People look at you and think, oh, you're just this wonderful person. And a lot of the time they don't know what you've been through. So I was like, okay, great. I never saw it that way, but it's true. And in terms of like these, spiritual world and the physical world, I kind of touched upon it before, because there is so much that we do not see. And, it's based on my faith, yes, but also scientifically. Think about it. I heard you talking about it, something similar on a previous podcast about, energy and things like that. There is so much energy to work with. So in terms of like, tapping into the spiritual realm and the physical realm, I'm like, let's use the things, energy, the things that we cannot see, as well as the things that we can see to create something amazing. So typically with people, I like to help them do what I call activate your USP. So the U is all around activating what I call your unlimited power, tapping into this 99.999% of energy, unlimited possibility, and harnessing that, to make change here. And the S stands for spirit power. I believe that, there's so many challenges right now with everything that's going on. For the women I work with, they're wondering, like, how am I there's so many things pulling at me, like so many things need me, like, where do I even focus? I really think your spirit power, which, you can simplify saying getting guided through your intuition, can guide you to make the right decisions. A lot of people think, oh, all I see is all there is. Well, no, there's a lot of things pulling for your attention. There's a lot of things that are uncertain. There's a lot of things that are scary. But when you tap in and get that spiritual guidance, it's clear what you need to do. And then I like to talk about your personal power again, which is still not really visible, but everybody's kind of wired differently. We all have cognitive strengths, things we're amazing at. We all have cognitive strengths, how we instinctively take action. So I like to understand how somebody's wired cognitively and cognitively to help them basically use these three things to create mind-blowing results that they thought were impossible. So hopefully that summarizes what I
love that. That's awesome, and definitely some great tips. You also said, I'm not sure this is part of that. You have some steps that people can take if they're in a impossible situation right now? What are some of those steps?
Yes. So I would say, first of all, when you're in this impossible situation, I'd kind of cut off all all the incoming messaging. So sometimes it could be, I find a lot of clients who are getting more and more stressed about their situation because they're constantly listening to the news. So right now, the news is intense, whether it's about the virus or, the political situation in your country. Like, there's just so much input that if you're already feeling like, oh, that is only going to make it worse. And if you're going to access unlimited power, which is what you cannot see, you definitely cannot be, stressed out about all the input, all the messages coming in. And if you're going to get divine guidance, you definitely don't need that. So I'm not saying be uninformed. I am extremely informed because I do, I help clients and I need to understand what's going on in the business world. I need to understand what's going on for my family. So I am informed, but I'm not sitting there being programmed by the programming. So I would say, how much programming are you receiving? If it's uplifting content like this, great. But if it's things that are getting, everybody's situation is different, and there'll be different inputs that make your situation worse based on, what it is you're going through. I would limit things that make you feel worse. Number one, that's the biggest thing I usually. If nobody people are doing, if they're not doing this already, it's usually a big thing. I used to have myself and other clients kind of reach for the phone first thing in the morning, check email, check this, check that. And that is like the worst way to start the day because immediately you're stressed and you're in reaction mode. The key to transform, whatever situation you're in, however impossible it looks, is to get out of that reaction mode and get into what I like to call creation mode, where you're like, okay, I'm in creation mode. This is what I'm doing. This is what I'm creating. I'm aware of what's happening, but I am not reacting to them. I am dealing with them whilst creating intentionally what I want to create.
Yeah. I like that. One thing that I tell people is if there's two options. Either you're programming your mind or somebody's programming your mind for you, right? And so you have to be able to distinguish the two different things. And I believe that the news is one of those where they're programming your mind. And so if you want to be informed and it's like really breaking news, believe me, you're going to hear from it and you don't have to watch TV for that. And then the things that do matter, whether you're trying to get information for business, again, you can definitely search those things. You just don't sit in front. Like I gave up TV a long time ago. I don't watch the news because I think there's just so much, I think, negativity, and it's just really programming your mind, right? And so definitely that's something that I decided to just cut off and say, I'm not going to do that just because it's not for me. Even though, going through all of that, one thing that I tell people too is the most critical thing that you have is between your 2 ears, and that is your mind. And guess what? It costs you nothing, $0. So let's utilize it to our fullest, right, from that perspective.
Oh, absolutely. Your mind, your mindset is everything. I mean, the actual actions that you take is probably like 20% of it. It's the mind and the mindset. And actually, that's what I was alluding to. So I love that you mentioned that as a follow-on, because you've got to protect your mind. You've got to guard your mind, because that is where everything else is going to flow from.
Yeah, no, definitely. And so you seem like you have some, I mean, you're optimist. You're very positive, right? So I want to know about what are some of the things that you do on a day-to-day basis to really just put you in this state of mind?
Yeah. So, kind of like what I shared a little bit earlier, I wake up every morning pretty much at 5 a.m. I have a husband, two young kids. So when everybody's up, the house is like, wah! So I like to wake up at 5 when nobody's up, and that's my time. I have at least a couple of hours. And I usually start with, some meditation, some prayer. I do a bit of reading. I kind of just journal. I really get into a space of, hearing from God, getting clear on, I'm very connected to the vision of what I'm creating, and getting direction, that kind of spiritual guidance of like, what is the best use of my time? Because there's so much that comes at me every single day that could have me running in 15 million different directions. And that is not going to serve me, my family, my clients, or anybody. So I get guidance as to what are the main things that need to get done today. And I do those. So there's many things I leave undone at the end of the day, but that was not what I got guidance that this is the most for today. Because people say to me, oh, how do you do everything? I don't. I get guidance on what needs to happen today in that time. I get such clarity, and I know what is important to create. Kind of that 80-20, what you do will get you 80% of the results. So I get that 80-20 strategy in the morning. And then I love to work out as well. This is a new thing that I kind of spiritual MasterChefs in the pandemic. So when things were like kind of crazy, this year I had a lot of clients in freak out mode and, doing a lot of crisis stuff earlier on in the year. I was panicked because, nobody knew what was happening. It was terrifying. So I said, dear God, what do I do in this situation? And it was so funny, Cesar. I heard get fit and healthy. And I'm like, get fit and healthy? I need business strategy. I'm like an international speaker, flying here, there, and everywhere to speak. Everything's canceled. You're telling me to get fit and healthy? And I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. So I started to get fit and healthy, ended up losing nearly 25 pounds. I'm in the best shape of my life, and I'm 40. And according to like the stats, I have the body of a 24-year-old. So it's just shocking to me that would happen because it wasn't on the plan. But it's now something I absolutely love doing every single morning. Or 6 days a week I do this, and it just sets me up. You have feel-good hormones when you work out. So just starting the day, getting spiritually strong, getting physically strong. I'm ready for anything,
I love that. And I may add, and you talked about it earlier too, is, one of the first things we do is we pick up this device and start looking at, emails and social media and that kind of stuff. And definitely, I would say the first 15 minutes when you wake up, like make sure you don't pick up your phone at least the first 15 minutes. I would say more like an hour, but at the end of the day, the mind, the way it works is most responsive the first 15 minutes. So whatever you feel in mind, you're actually getting and tapping into the unconscious mind. So you definitely want to have meditation, journaling, reading, workouts, things that are going to help you from that perspective. And so
Absolutely.
I love that. Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. So, Maxine, I know you have, I respect your time. And so before I let you go, I have a couple more questions for you. Number one, how can people get hold of you or learn more about your programs, your coaching, that kind of stuff?
Oh, thank you for asking. They can find me at my website, which is www.thefutureisgreater, literally all one word.com. And literally there's links to my membership, my form for coaching or consulting.
Okay.
It's all there.
And I have a note here, which I love this. And if you can elaborate more on that, anything that people desire is possible, no matter now how crazy and impossible that circumstance may look. Very much alignment with your message. So that's, your message is aligned to what you can do, your circumstance. Can you elaborate more on that in terms of what people can do?
Yeah, no, I meant kind of anything that you desire is possible. So typically, I think most people go through life feeling like there has to be more to life than this. Like, I think everybody, unless somebody who's kind of living their dreams fully, and that's very few people, most people kind of feel like there has to be more to life than this. And usually when we feel that is because there is more to life than this. Before everybody was born, I really believe there's this amazing destiny that is set forth. But life happens, things happen that end up, putting us in a situation where we are maybe so far away from the life that we're supposed to be living. And sometimes you get these flashes of like, oh, maybe I could be living this. But because of your current situation, especially now in the middle of a global pandemic, people losing jobs, maybe you've lost even family members, it is just horrific what people have been through. It could feel like this big dream, this big destiny. It's just, impossible. But I want to encourage you that really anything you desire is possible, because the reason you have the desire in the first place is because it's meant for you. Like you wouldn't even think about it if it's not something that was meant for you. So I want to encourage whoever's listening, like if there's any kind of glimmer of there has to be more, don't look at the circumstances of what you're seeing on the news or looking at in the economy or whatever. The reason you have the desire is because it's possible, and you basically almost reaching out and clinging to that energy of that impulse sometimes is all it takes for you to basically say, okay, I'm going to go create this. And then, we've talked about who you're surrounding yourself with. This is not something that you have to do on your own, because people think, oh, I've got to do it all. Where do I even begin? Typically, there's people that have done whatever it is that you're looking to do. So find them, and work with them, whether it's, in one of their programs or as a free mentor, whatever, read their book, listen to their podcast. Cling to the people, surround yourself with the 5 people that are kind of on the same path. And I said it was kind of like very much aligned to your message of you can overcome anything, which is the message of here, this podcast, because I really do believe that you can overcome anything.
Yeah, and you're definitely a true testimony of that, going through so many different challenges in your life, and to come out of those things, and again, from that, creating what you have now, which is one of the things that I really enjoy and love talking to people like you, is that, again, there's a message there. There's something that somebody's going to resonate and say, you know what, man, that message from Maxine, I love that, and I really need to put that into practice or do something different to where you're empowering people, right? And so I really, really enjoy that. Maxine, you've given us a lot of great tips. I don't know if you have one more, so I'm going to give it a try. If people are going through some sort of challenge right now, what is one thing they can do to overcome that challenge?
Yeah. Can I take a couple of minutes to share a story that maybe might hit the point? So I gave birth to my son in July last year. It was, I think we come up with these birth plans of what we hope it will be. And for me, it was the exact opposite of what I hoped it would be. I nearly lost my life giving birth to my son. And the first year of his life, I imagined I'd be holding him and bonding. Instead, it was basically in a room, panicking with healthcare professionals storming around trying to save my life, looking at my son across the room, thinking, am I going to be here for him? Somehow they managed to save my life, and I went home after a few days. However, a few days after getting home, I wake up in a pool of blood, and the blood is spreading. I have no idea what's going on at this point, and I am freaking out. So my husband is a big guy, doesn't get scared about anything. He sees the situation and begins to freak out. And when he's panicking, that tells me it's bad. So we phone up. Over here in England, we have this advice line saying, can you give us some advice? This is the situation. They say, hey, ma'am, you do not need advice. You need an ambulance. You are dying. So when they said that, I began to panic, Caesar, and I was like, oh my God, I'm dying. They say that your life begins to flash before your eyes when you're dying, and it's true. I've lived in so many countries over the years, and I began to see the different countries and the different friends kind of coming in and out. And somehow my husband managed to carry me to the bathroom to wait for the ambulance, and I could feel myself slipping away at this point. And as I was slipping away, thinking I'm dying, I couldn't help but shake this sense on my left shoulder saying, look up, just look up, just look up. It took all the strength I had to look up into the room I just come from. And I looked at my son. He was lying on the bed, fast asleep, less than 2 weeks old. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I chose to nurse this guy. So if I die right now, by the time my husband deals with a dead wife on a Saturday morning, goes out to go get feed and stuff and teaches this boy how to eat, like he'll starve. And I have a daughter who's 5, she was 4 at the time. She had come down to our room fast asleep, terrified of blood. If she woke up and saw like blood everywhere, she'd freak out. And just looking at my kids and suddenly thinking, oh my God, I can't die. They need me. This gave me the strength I needed to basically wake up, the ambulance, get up, the ambulance was here, start answering the questions. They were looking at me like, we're going to need a hearse. And I suddenly started making sense. It gave me the strength I need to feed my son one last time, potentially, hand him back to his father and say, listen, I don't know where they're taking me, but find me in 3 hours. That's his feeding schedule. He needs to eat. Off I went, gave me the strength I needed to get into the ambulance, have emergency surgery, come out. And I remember being wheeled out of surgery. My husband had found where we were in the hospital, and he handed me the baby to feed again. I looked up at the clock. It was exactly 3 hours after I fed him last. And I was like, oh, wow, thank God. What had happened was, during the emergency surgery at his birth, they had ruptured my placenta, left some in there, and it was basically hemorrhaging. And I was almost hemorrhaging to death. I lost 3 liters of blood. I think the body only has 5 or 6. So over half my body's blood. And they said, I don't know how you're alive. I don't know how in the world you're still here, because quite frankly, you should be dead. And I say all of that to say that there's something super powerful when you're in a difficult situation about connecting to your why and to your purpose. Basically, as I felt myself slipping away and I looked at my kids and I thought, the next generation need me, I can't. That gave me the strength to get up and fight. So I don't know what situation you find yourself in. I really hope it's not a near-death thing. But if it is, what is your why? What is that purpose that you can cling to that will give you the strength you need to fight? What is your next generation? Because your next generation need you to fight. Your next generation need you to basically take action. Your next generation need you. Do not give up. Take action.
I love that, and I think if I may add to that, I think part of just listening to you, I think there was also a couple of things. The fact that you had that faith, that you trusted, that you were certain that you needed to again connect to your why and your purpose, and when you put all those things into place, I think that it gives you that more powerful avenue to continue to push forward and continue to go through it, and really just moving forward with that. So that's amazing. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Really, really appreciate that. Maxine, thank you again so much for being here. I really appreciate all of the information you've given us. It was really, really good. Anything before I let you go, anything else you want to say?
Yeah, I'd just love for anybody to reach out and connect to me. I'd love to connect with you. If there's anything that I say that resonates, I'd love to have a chat and point you in the right direction, invite you into one of my programs if that makes sense, or send you somewhere else. But there is always hope. There is always hope. And when we talk about look for your purpose, look for your why, sometimes people look for something big. It could just be like, your kids need you. That's big enough, right? So connect with me. I'd love to help you on your journey because you truly can overcome anything.
Awesome. I love it. Thank you so much, Maxine. And for the rest of you guys, do me a favor. Please make sure you comment, like, and share. Connect with Maxine. Check her out. Make sure that you guys find her on her social media or on her webpage. And I'll see you guys in the next episode of You Can Overcome Anything podcast show. Goodbye.
Hi, I'm Cesar Espino, real estate investor, business coach, and consultant, and author of the book, You Can Overcome Anything, Even When the World Says No. My number is 424-501-6046. In my book, I talk about making the necessary changes to shift your mind for prosperity and certainty. Pick up your copy at Amazon. I also love helping families with their real estate and can purchase your house fast and all cash. Follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. My number is 424-501-6046.
Thank you for having me today. I am so glad you've tuned into this podcast. You can find me at your favorite podcast platform where you can like, subscribe, comment, and share. And to learn more about myself, my services, you can find me at www.cesarrespino.com, or you can also find me at your social media. Thanks for joining me, and I am looking forward to having you at the next episode. And know you truly can overcome anything.